Dave Naylor, TSN CFL Insider, joining us from the Big Smoke this morning on video chat. And Dave, you just heard what we were talking about. Do you believe Mike O'Shea that they think they're good in Winnipeg and don't need a veteran quarterback?
Well, I think the bigger concern to me is not whether Chris Streveler can get it done, but that's a significant concern, is like if Chris Streveler takes a hit, and he tends to take a few every game, more than the average quarterback. He invites them, in fact. Look what they have behind him, right? Guys who've never thrown live passes in CFL games. So you have the risk of a Grey Cup-ready team who's one hit away from being in the hands of a guy who's never played a regular season game. So, that is the bigger concern. That's the biggest concern for Winnipeg. I get the overreaction or reaction. I think it's a bit of an overreaction to Chris Streveler and his performance against the Hamilton Tiger Cats. Ironically, a guy who's never had a 200-yard passing game this year had a 300-yard passing game, which was, we all know, mostly in garbage time. And he ran the ball less than he has in any start. But in terms of where the Bombers' offense is in terms of Matt Nichols versus Chris Streveler, I'm probably going to surprise people, but I wrote this in my column last week. The Bombers were averaging more points as a team within Chris Streveler's 4 starts than they were with Matt Nichols until last week. Now, they ran up against the best defense in the league. They ran up against a defense that played zone against them the entire game, which was tough for him to throw against. He's got to be accurate, and it means that every defender is looking at the football at the quarterback, so it makes it tougher for him to run. He only ran 8 times for the lowest average yards he's had in any game. But I'm not ready to throw the towel in on Chris Streveler here yet. And again, if you're talking about a move they're going to make for a quarterback, this isn't like trading for a leadoff hitter in baseball, right, where you just stick him in center field and put him at the top of the batting order. A quarterback has to be entrenched in an offense and with the teammates and the coaching staff. So, are you going to get Kevin Glenn and have him come in at this point of the season or anybody else? I think the only move the Bombers can make would be to make a move for a veteran backup. So at least they've got some insurance if Streveler gets hurt. Other than that, I think their season is in Chris Streveler's hands. And I don't think that's the worst place to be.
Speaking of quarterbacks, and I know you have some topics that you'd like to get to, and we will, but just with the Argos, did they open the garage sale as of Saturday for their quarterbacks? Right? Are any of them available leading up to next week's trade deadline?
Yeah, I think they are. And because, listen, they've got 5 of them, and only one of them is signed for next year, and that's Michael O'Connor. And he wasn't in uniform on Saturday night. I know that because as I was walking towards my seat, he walked past me near the concession stands in street clothes. So, and the one that makes the most sense, I think, is James Franklin. Franklin is, I would say based on the last 2 years, they are probably more inclined. I'm hesitating as I say this. I don't think they're sold on either McLeod Bethel Thompson or James Franklin. And there could be other changes in Toronto, we all know. I'm not sure you can sell either of those guys to the public next year. I think teams probably would be more inclined to go with Franklin just because he's a little more versatile guy. And then in terms of being able to run around and such, then McLeod Bethel Thompson, who's more of the straight drop back type, maybe a little less of a game manager. And sometimes a game manager is what you're capable of being a game manager. And sometimes that's what you want in your backup quarterback. So, I think they're going to trade James Franklin. I'd be shocked if the Toronto Argonauts don't trade some quarterback. But the word we've been hearing out of Winnipeg is kind of like you described off the top. We're good. Never mind the starter. We're good at backup. I think Hamilton is in a very similar situation. Dane Evans, my goodness, Dane Evans is playing so well. His contract for each of the next 2 seasons is $100,000 base. Think of the economic advantage the Hamilton Tiger Cats have if they actually have a frontline, upper tier starting quarterback, and that's the way Evans played Friday night in Winnipeg, and can carry that into next season at $100,000 base plus pay time, or not just next year, but the year after. But they're in the same situation as Winnipeg because they're one hit away from having a team that is Grey Cup ready, in the hands of a quarterback who is not.
You got tongues wagging around here with your column last week. Sounds like you had a good one-on-one with Cody Fajardo. Everybody's around here that this extension is going to be signed soon. What do you know about those talks?
Well, that they're early, and I think the biggest thing, and this shouldn't surprise anybody. I think there's a mutual desire on both sides to get this done. You know how when you watch sport, whatever sport we're talking about, sometimes a player just seems like a fit in a place. Doesn't Cody Fajardo just seem like a fit in Saskatchewan?
Oh yeah,
And this is a guy who, was he like a lot of what a lot of guys go through. He was frustrated being the number 3 in Toronto. He went from the number 2 to the number 3 over the course of the 2017 season. He dropped on the depth chart, not climbed. Then he goes to BC and he's the number 3, and he's frustrated. He wants more of an opportunity. But you talk to him now, he looks back on it and says, I played behind Travis Lulay, I played behind Ricky Ray. That's probably where I should have been. When I look at other quarterbacks around this league who are successful, they played that role. It's probably the best thing that ever happened. And he goes to Saskatchewan, he gets this opportunity, but there's no question he loves it there. He loves the fit, he loves the team, he loves the province, and he loves that he's got his opportunity. And I think the Rough Riders very much feel the same way about him. And I sent out a tweet Saturday night saying, remember when Cody Fajardo was a short yardage run first quarterback? I mean, he's 23 of 27 for 278 with 3 touchdowns the other night. I mean, he's evolving. And I asked him in the conversation I had with him last week, do you think that you can become like a tier 1 passer in this league, a guy who's right up year after year, ranking with the top passers in the league? And he absolutely believes he does. He knows that as he gets older, you got to protect the body, run less. That gets easier as you learn the defensive schemes, the offensive schemes, and you become more comfortable as a pocket passer. It's not really what he did in college. That's part of why he came into this league sort of tagged as the running quarterback, third down guy. So the one thing we can say about this is there is a mutual desire to get something done. It's been a great fit for him. It's been a great fit for the Rough Riders. He's got to find out what the number is. But one of the things he made clear to me at this point was I don't think he's looking to sign another 1-year deal. He wants to be that guy, and I think he's earned it based on he's played this year. He wants to sign a 2, 3, et cetera kind of year deal and be that guy in Saskatchewan for a while. And the Riders can kind of shelve their search for a quarterback for the next few years. He wants to do a long-term one. There were no numbers really talked. It was just back and forth at the early stage. But I would have said this before I talked to him last week. I would have been really surprised if Cody Fajardo's not back in Saskatchewan. And after the conversation I had with him last week, I'll be stunned if he's not.
Dave, the stadium proposal from the Schooners ownership group to the Halifax City Council looked pretty ingenious to me. What news do you have here today on where the Schooners are going?
Well, I'm going to use just some logic from the outside here a little bit, okay? When they put this thing out originally, it was a $190 million stadium. Now they're at 130, like all in. Land, soft costs, hard costs, architect, everything, right? That's 130. So I'm going to guess, and this is kind of, mostly my guess. Some people say, yeah, you're not far off, but this is where I'm getting, that when they trotted out the $190 million, the city, and remember, the city staff is working with these guys to try to get this done, not against them. And they got a mayor who wants to do this, right? If they can do it responsibly. I'm going to guess that the mayor and the city staff probably looked at them and said, guys, we've looked at what 190 is going to cost to finance that number. We don't think we can sell 190. So there's no point you going out and doing architecture and designs and presenting a proposal for a $190 million stadium because we'll never get it through. So what do you think the group said to the city staff? Well, what number could you get through, do you think? You might as well start there, right? And then work backwards. Rather than coming up with what you want and saying, what's that cost? You might as well start with the cost and say, okay, here's what a $130 million facility would cost to finance. And here's how those numbers break down. Here's how much we could raise from the tax base on what they call the TIF, the tax incremental financing. Here's how much we could get from the rental car tax. Here's how much we could get off the hotel tax. And here's how much we'd have to put in ourselves. And if we think those numbers work, then we can present that. That's kind of, I think, where we are. And as your viewers and listeners may or may not know, they're basically building half a stadium. They're going to build one half with 12,000 seats on it that has luxury boxes and suites and comfy chairs and all those kind of things you can sell high end. And the other side is essentially going to be scaffolding. It's temporary seats. And then somewhere down the road, when the team's established and the league's economics improve and such, maybe they build the other side of the stadium. But maybe they just leave them up as bleachers. That's what they've got to do. They're not going to build Mosaic Stadium 2 in Halifax, at least not now. It's going to be pretty modest. But I think this has a chance. I think there's a lot of political will to get it done. The big question is going to be when they really polish the numbers, who's got the risk here? Is it the city? Is it the province? and how is that risk going to be shared? Because that's always the thing. What's the worst case scenario? Where could we end up? But I think that just based on seeing the presentation that they've made, as you said, kind of ingenious, I think they've worked backwards and just said, hey, what's the numbers that we think can work? What can we build with those numbers? And that's how I think they've arrived at this.
I love it. Hey, lastly, Nails, before I let you go, I love the little man cave thing you got going there. Is there a story behind every pennant on the wall, or what's the deal there?
You know what? Most of these pennants on my wall are from my boyhood. I mean, really. Like, in fact, I was looking at the other day and seeing how many of them are teams that either don't exist anymore or have changed their logos. I've got a Houston Oilers, a Montreal Expos, a California Angels, not Anaheim, the Los Angeles Raiders. All those shows you how times change, even when you don't realize it. No, these are all from different stadiums that I visited when I was a kid, and sat in my basement for, my parents' basement. Who are we kidding here? For 20, 25 years, and finally, when they said get this stuff out of my house, I thought, well, maybe I'll put it up in my home office.
Abu Meshwick saying that you have some of the same pennants in
I thought you raided my bedroom as a kid. I got all those there. I don't even know where they are. They're up in your room.
Yeah.
It's amazing that they've actually all survived. And I think we got some CFL ones up there, right? Got the Lions.
Oh yeah.
Let's see, what else have I got up? It's the BC Lions. I think the BC Lions is the only CFL one. I got the Bears, the Twins, Tigers 85 World Series, Buffalo Bills, Jets, Cincinnati Reds, Vikings, Jays World Series, Red Sox, Reds, Texas Rangers, Pirates, Phillies. Yeah, only one CFL.
Wow.
Yeah, it's very well represented. Dave, we'll let you get back to doing your thing, but I appreciate the time here today. Thanks, buddy.
My pleasure. Take care, guys. Have a good show.
You're watching Rod Pedersen On Demand. For more of The Rod Pedersen Show, visit rodpedersen.com or follow Rod Pedersen on social media.